All right, communication. What major types of communication are there? Okay, so we have written communication, good. Written, verbal, and nonverbal. Okay. Are we always communicating?
Yes.
Yes. Whether we mean to or not, whether it's our intention to communicate or not, we are always communicating. Okay? And the reason why we're always communicating is because of this wonderful nonverbal communication. Okay? We're always communicating a message. Okay? Effective communication is crucial for the business world. Okay? First of all, it tells us that we're paying attention to the protocol, the way things should be happening. Okay? It's also important for us to know how to communicate effectively. Okay? It's also important for us to know when to communicate, because when to communicate is just as important as how you communicate. In a kitchen situation, do chefs yell?
Yes.
Okay. Does that mean they're always mad? No. If somebody is across the kitchen and they're doing something that can either hurt themselves or potentially hurt the people around them, and the chef has to raise their voice because the kitchen's full of commotion, pots and pans are banging, just because someone's yelling doesn't always necessarily mean that they are upset. Okay? They may be yelling and raising their voice to get their message heard across a busy kitchen. Okay? Now, there's other also nonverbal cues that will tell you if somebody's upset. Okay? So it's important. It's also improving your communication is an ongoing process. Okay? It is never ending. There's always something that you can learn to. You can always go back to a situation and be like, wow, I could have handled that a little bit better. I could have handled it this way, and this would have a completely different result. Okay, so communication is a skill that everyone needs to work on. Okay, there's two people involved in communication typically. Okay, there's a sender and a receiver. Okay, so there's somebody who's sending a message. Here we go, sender. And then the receiver is over here, R-E-C-E-I-V-I-E-R. I don't know why, ever since the 5th grade, I have to spell out receiver in order to spell it correctly. Okay, did I spell it correctly? Yeah, receiver, okay? So there's a sender and a receiver, and my message goes from one to the other. So the sender has to encode the message. They have to create the message. Then they send it. The receiver has to decode the message. They have to interpret that message. And then they have to encode their response, and then they send that back. They send their response back. The sender decodes that response, and then they create their response, and it's a back and forth communication process. Okay? And so we're going to talk about, throughout the class today, we're going to talk about some things that could potentially lead to a breakdown in the communication process. Why is it important to give information in a timely manner?
Compared to the guy on the bike with the potatoes.
Okay, yeah. So the guy on the bike on the potatoes I was telling you about earlier, I could have sat in my car and been like, haha, dinner's not going to be on time today. But
It's all on you.
if I was there and my boss found out that I was there and I saw that the potatoes were being prepared the wrong way,
You did nothing.
and I did nothing to it, that's my information. I have that information. If I don't use that, then that's going to look poorly on me. Okay? So at timely, I need to jump in my car. I need to go find him right now and say, by the way, buddy, let's go back and I will work with you to get these potatoes done so that the camp has a good meal tonight on time. Okay? So good, timely manner. What else? So let's put it in this perspective. How many of you all wait tables or have waited tables before? Okay. How many of you are bartenders or have bartended before? Okay. So how many of you have ever given away a drink for free? Be honest. I put my hand up, okay? Because with permission, good. I did not give it with permission. Okay. So as a server, I was trained by my server trainer. When my friends came in, I give them the hookup and I don't charge them for their beverage. Or if people come in and you think they're cool people and you think they're gonna tip you well, then you don't put their drinks on the check, because what are they gonna do? They're gonna add that $1.50 onto your tip. That never happened, okay? But that's how I was trained. And so my manager notices one day, hey, table 41 doesn't have drinks on it. They go to the computer, table 41 has 4 drinks. There's 4 teas on the table. They go to the computer and there's no tea rung up in my system, right? Timely manner, she needs to come tell me to get on that and put the drinks on the check. That does 2 things. It communicates to me as a server that my boss is actually paying attention, okay? And it communicates to me too that the importance of doing that. And so she would come to me and say, hey, David, I noticed that table 41 doesn't have any drinks on their check yet, but there's 4 teas on the table. Do me a favor and get those drinks on the check before you drop the check. 1, oh my gosh, my boss is following what I'm doing. They're actually paying attention. Number 2, I don't want to get in trouble, so I need to do this, right? If she waited till the end of the shift and said, hey, David, I noticed that today you had 70 drinks that were not rung up, that were on the tables, that were not rung up as checks on the check. Well, 70 drinks times $2 is $140 for that shift. Times 5 servers. Times 365 days a year. So in that timely manner, we need to get that information, okay? There's also sometimes, though, where if you're in a bit crazy busy rush, you also need to hold on to that piece of information and bring it up later when you maybe have a little bit more time to address it. So timeliness is also can affect how the message is received, okay? Formal communication is essentially just like what we call the chain of command. Are y'all familiar with the concept of chain of command? Anybody not familiar with the concept of chain of command? Okay, so it's basically the formal way that you're supposed to report things or communicate. Okay, so we have vertical communication and horizontal communication. So this is just an example of an organizational chart. Okay, vertical, which way does vertical go? Up and down. Okay, so vertical is up and down, right? The V goes up and down. Horizontal is across. Horizontal starts with an H, and so this little side to side, that's how I always memorized it.
Oh.
Vertical, up and down, horizontal, across, okay? So there's a specific line of authority, so if the general manager has something he wants to communicate to the servers, he or she wants to communicate to the servers, then they are going to communicate that message probably to their GM or to their AGM, down to the department chair for the rooms division, and then the rooms division, oh, sorry, I said servers, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, just kidding. Just kidding, I was thinking front office. So rooms division, sorry, food and beverage, and then food and beverage to the restaurants, to the servers, okay? If I'm a server in the restaurant and I have an issue that I want to bring forward, I do not just simply go from the server up to the general manager. There's a line of authority that I need to report to, that verbal communication, okay? Now, if the issue is with my manager, we've all had that issue before, you don't go to the general manager, you go to HR, or you might go to the assistant manager, whoever's above, that one person above. You might go to the food and beverage director, okay? So then we have horizontal communication. So side to side, that's people within the same level. So if I am the rooms director right here and I want to talk to the food and beverage director about a major group that's going to be in-house, and they're going to have gift certificates or they're going to have coupons for breakfast, and I want to make sure that the servers know, I'm going to communicate that horizontally with that person, okay? What's another example of horizontal or vertical communication in the workplace?
Talking with your coworkers.
Okay, so talking with your coworkers, that would be what? Horizontal. Okay, communication with your coworkers is a horizontal communication. What's another example of vertical communication? Okay, so your supervisors, managers, how many of you, again, raise your hand if you've waited tables, worked in a restaurant, okay? How many of you ever have like a special of the day? Or you have a pre-shift meeting, right? The pre-shift meeting, in that meeting, your manager is communicating something to you as a group of employees, okay? That's vertical communication. If we are gonna be out of something today, we wanna make sure we're communicating that. If we want to focus on selling appetizers today, we're gonna communicate that, okay? Gossip is informal communication, okay? So my best friend Beatrice, when I was at Cheesecake Factory, she and I just wanted to see how fast gossip would spread at the Cheesecake Factory. And so this when it first opened, long time ago, like 17 years ago, we were in the bakery, and all the servers would hang out at the bakery counter waiting for their cheesecakes, and the servers would just start catching up on gossip, figure out and we'd sit there and listen to them talk about all these, what's going on. And so Beatrice and I, we just like to play jokes a lot. And so we decided we were going to see how fast it would take gossip to spread around Cheesecake Factory. And so without even saying anything, we were just kind of casual conversation. People are waiting for their cheesecakes. And I was like, Beatrice, I don't know. What do you think? Should we keep it? I don't know. We're really young. I don't know if we can afford. I don't know, right? Within 30 minutes, the assistant general manager of the store came over to the bakery counter. David and Beatrice, I need to chat with you for a minute about interpersonal relationships at work. And I'm like, do you not know who I am? There's nothing going on between the two of us. We just did it as a joke. And so within 30 minutes, it took it to get to the assistant general manager of the store. Only 30 minutes, right? People talking. And it may even be that she was passing by and she heard other servers talking about, did you hear about David and Beatrice? They're going to have a baby, right? That's going to be the happiest baby in the world. I don't know. I don't know what they were saying. But gossip is damaging, okay? It's typically about somebody else that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the truth, okay? And so we really have to be aware of the potential damage that gossip can do. And if you hear gossip, what's that saying? If you don't have anything nice to say, sit next to me. That's we don't want to have that rule of thumb. You guys are y'all are all the ethical people. Don't say anything at all, right? But again, so it's damaging, it's hurtful, it can cause contention within an organization. It can break down the teamwork of an organization, and so we really have to.
For your customers to listen to.
Absolutely, it definitely is. Exactly, that's a really good point, Teresa. How many times have you ever walked up to somebody, or you've overheard somebody at a? Thank you so much. If you ever heard somebody at the teller at HEB or a sales service representative, and they're talking about, did you hear what she said? Did you hear what he said? He did this, and it's not professional. Complain about their bosses. It's not professional for the customer and the guest to hear, okay? And so again, yeah, it absolutely can have a negative impact on the business itself. Good. So the sender. You encode that message. You have to plan that message effectively. You have to plan that message appropriately, what you're going to do, what you're going to say. Whether that's written, verbal, or nonverbal communication, you're sending a message. Yes, sir?
These slides are online, right?
They should be. If they're not, then I will get them on there. And I am recording today, so I'll post the recorded lecture online as well. You're welcome. Okay? The receiver has to decode it and then send their feedback.
Oh, usually.
Sometimes it's really challenging, especially if there's if it's a really kind of volatile or emotional situation, whether you're the sender or the receiver. Okay, if you're the receiver and someone's sending you a message and you hate that person, okay, if you let your emotions get into the mix and you're like, whatever that person says, it's wrong because I know they're just an idiot. Okay, we've all probably had that. I'll admit to it, right? I'm like, oh, this person's sending me a message again, you know. But we have to remove that emotion from the situation because we want to make sure that we are receiving the message appropriately. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
How do you remove the emotion from the situation? I had a situation happen similar yesterday. I have this coworker, and I hate his guts. I'm not even lying. Like, I freaking like, everything that I do, he'll give me, like, speaks over me, interrupts me, and reminds me, and the chef's seen it and shoot him out for it. I'm to the point where I just don't like him, and I'm having problems communicating with him because I want to slap him every time I look at him. I'm not even lying, like the anger in me starts growing. I don't even know how to control myself.
Right. So it takes practice for sure. It also there's there's another saying that most people don't quit jobs, they quit people. So whether it's a manager or somebody else in that organization that they cannot deal with, they quit because of that. So obviously it's your job and it's your livelihood and you don't want to mess with that.
Right.
And so the best way to do honestly is communicate only when you absolutely have to. If it's somebody that's on the line that's with you,
right.
then you've got to work out something.
I know.
That some way that you can, and it could be also.
It's hard.
So verbal and nonverbal communication. Verbal communication includes the words that you're saying, but also the tone of your voice. And so if you go into a situation agitated, that tone is going to be in your voice, and that person's going to receive the message. You could be saying, hey, let's work this out. Let's figure out a way to get onto some common ground. But if you have an edgy tone in your voice, they're not going to receive that as being, let's work this out. They're going to receive that as a message of hostility. Okay. And so you really do need to focus on removing that emotion, which is very challenging. I'm not going to lie. But it takes practice, and the more you do it, and the more you see the results of taking a few moments to, what do they say? Count to 10. Well, if you need to count to 30, then count to 30. Count to whatever number you need to count to get to where you can calm down, take some relaxing breaths. As a server, if I had really difficult guests or if I had people that I was like working with that like either other servers that were making me upset, I would go into the walk-in, I would just stand there for about 15, 20 seconds, kind of take some deep breaths, kind of cool down a little bit, and then go back out, kind of collect my thoughts. So try to think of if there's any kind of coping things, and then also get your managers involved. Just let them know, hey, by the way, I'm really trying here. These are things that I've tried. What other things can I try? So if you just go to your manager and just say, I hate this person, I can't work with them, they're probably going to ask you, well, what have you done to try to cope with that? So if you go with them and say, I've tried this, this, and this, and it's still not really, and obviously since you mentioned this particular case that the chefs called them out on it already, they're aware of the situation.
Yeah.
So you might go to them and say, hey, I've tried this, this, and this. What else do you recommend? And if it needs to be that the manager needs to get you two together and have an actual sit down and chat, then that might be what it leads to. But you have to kind of figure out what's going to work best. Alyssa, did you have a comment?
Also, I'm not in, food industry right now, but at work, I'm not very good with one of the, my coworkers. I would have to just kill her with kindness. And then, the way she's acting, everybody else can see it, but I'm actually trying my best. I'm well, she's doing it to herself. She's in a way, she's kind of making herself look dumb.
Yeah.
Because you're just there and you're okay, well, I'm actually being cordial with you. And you're over here trying to act you're all up in the air and everything. So I'm just
Absolutely. That's a great example. That's something you can definitely do.
It puts
Good.
yourself in a better light.
when the situation comes to it and your bosses are looking at your performance and like, well, you're the more professional one, so you communicate and you're keeping it cordial.
Yeah.
This one's acting like a fool. Let's get rid of them.
Absolutely. Very good.
And then you also have like your coworkers that can back you up, like, hey, she actually is trying, or you actually are trying to take a step. And because like I work at a daycare, so there's parents coming in and out. So if you have confrontation and you do it in front of parents, like the parents are gonna be like, seriously, like this is where I'm sending my kid.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you have to try to work it out and try to make yourself look better before you try to like complain in a way. Only because you can like tell yourself like, oh, I can just do this to myself, like by myself, rather than trying to get higher up involved with it, because then it just starts making a huge mess of it.
Absolutely. And to that point too, most people don't believe this about me, but as happy as I am on this end of the spectrum, I can go to this end of the spectrum relatively quickly, and very few people in my professional life have seen this version of me for very good reason, because it reflects a negative, an unprofessional image. But I have a few instances have had the situation where I have let my emotions overcome, and my mom calls it the pressure cooker. The steam is released, and it's not a slow release. Yes. My mom. So when I was a little kid, second grade, my mom went to talk to the counselor and was like, "Hey, what can I do to help David deal with his emotions and whatever and everything like that?" And he was like, "David, like happy-go-lucky David, like he's always in a good mood." And then about a month later, my counselor called my mom. She's like, "You know that David you told me about? I met him today. He's on his bike. He's on his way home." And so yeah. So it definitely, I mean, you don't want to have that reaction, because if you do, and you have that reaction continuously, well, that becomes part of your reputation. That becomes part of your brand and who you are. And you don't want to be branded like that. Yes. Okay. So a barrier is just something that will block our communication. Okay, effective communication. And we have like this term noise. So noise is anything that kind of blocks that communication. So what would be an example of noise? Okay, so constant like actual chit chat, someone sitting at your desk next to you, like if you're in a cubicle situation and somebody's chatting on the phone about non-work stuff, or people stop by and they just chat, and you're like, go away, I can't focus. Okay, what else? So stress can definitely be a noise. Stress can definitely create that barrier to effective communication. What else?
Like ambiance.
Okay, in like what regards?
Like, well, the cubicle situation, like typing.
Okay.
That can become overwhelming for some people.
Good. What about this? Tapping or pen clicking, that can definitely cause somebody to be distracted on that, so that if they're trying to listen to something, they're not getting that effective communication is not happening. Yes, Michael.
Someone's eating or they're hungry.
Okay, good. Eating. If they don't eat with their mouth with their mouth closed, I'm just like, oh my gosh. Stop shopping or snacking gum. You're just like, oh my gosh. Okay, what else? Let it all out. This is a therapy session. Just kidding. Okay, good. So anxiety, not being aware of what's going to happen, could potentially, you're focused on the fact that you're focused on what's the possibility when someone's giving you directions on something, then all of a sudden you miss the entire message. There's a meme that's going around on Facebook. I'm sure you've seen it. It's like, stop saying they didn't teach us that in school. You were talking. Have y'all seen that one? Yeah. Okay. So there's one that's like, stop saying that they didn't teach us that in school. You were talking. And so I'm like, can we update that to you had your headphones in, you were on your cell phone, you were doing homework for another class. I was like, it goes way beyond talking today, and so those things are noise. I'm focused on something when I should be doing when I should be focusing on the message that's being conveyed. Okay.
And I know this is really scary, but is I can't, when I'm talking with someone and they aren't speaking correct grammar,
Mm-hmm.
or using the word like 752,000
Sorry.
times in one.
I'll work on that.
It's hard for me to find them, you know, to talk to them and not just concentrate, you know, like 1, 2,
Yeah.
3. You know, so it's hard to stay connected. In
Absolutely.
conversation.
Good.
Yeah.
And that's a barrier to that effective communication. Sarah, you said that a professor.
Yeah, I've had that too. I had a science professor, and he would say, you see.
Oh, like you see?
No, do you see?
Oh, do you see?
Yes,
Oh, do you see?
And he would like write it on the board, you see, and I couldn't focus on anything except for him saying you see multiple
Right.
times.
Absolutely.
And I completely bombed that class and did not pass it.
And probably in his mind, he was being effective because he was saying, do you see? And nobody was like,
Nobody saw.
yeah. So one time I had an algebra professor, and she would say ta-da for everything. She'd get up on the board and she would say this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and ta-da, the answer is this. And then like one day she finally turned around and we're all just like looking. And then she says, what does this ta-da mean? I think she was somewhere, I think she was like Indian or, you know, some Asian. And she's like, what does this ta-da mean? And we're like, means poof, magically it appears. So there's nothing ta-da about algebra, okay? It does not poof, magically appear. And so then she was like, she realized that she was saying, ta-da, it's done. And she was like, okay, maybe I need to go back and do this. So I tell my students in my math classes, if I have a ta-da moment, please tell me, and I will try to go back and do that again.
You don't even
Yes.
realize they're doing it.
Absolutely. So those ums and lights and those fillers are definitely things that you can work on for sure. I recently had the opportunity to do a promotional video for our programs here at St. Philip's, more specifically the hospitality and hotel management programs. And I was on Great Day SA on Ken's. And I went back and watched the little 1.5 Facebook like teaser video, and I answered every single question with absolutely. I said absolutely probably about 15 times in 1.5 minutes. And so going back, I didn't notice it at the time, but going back and listening to it, I need a different agreement word other than absolutely. Gotta change it up. Otherwise I sound like a robot. Okay? So verbal, nonverbal, and written communications are the types that we're going to talk about today. The words that you use, but also how you speak, the tone of voice that you use, your rhythm, your tempo, the projection, how loud your voice is. If I was up here teaching this class about, you guys would probably fall asleep. I had a professor, no, it wasn't only because of him, I'm just going to blame it on him. But it was actually a teacher in high school for pre-cal. I would fall asleep every single class period because he had a monotone, a monotonous voice. And he had a monotone voice. It was after lunch, so my stomach is full. And there's a whole lot of different factors that I would just fall asleep in class. And so I ended up failing pre-cal, and I had to retake the one semester over again. I passed the other semester because I learned how to use my calculator appropriately to check all my work. But verbal communication, that plays a major role. If I'm yelling, if I'm raising my voice, okay, if I'm speaking too loudly and I'm in a small room, then that's going to convey a different message. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you're in a big room and someone, like the microphone stops going out, and then they're like, can you guys hear me? Can I do without a microphone? Or somebody's like, you know what, I have a big voice. I don't need a microphone. Can y'all hear me appropriately? Right? No, I can't hear you. Please use a microphone. That's why we have a microphone. Okay? And so this verbal communication is crucial. Also, the timing that we use, that's part of a nonverbal communication, the timing. If somebody's doing something really well, I think oftentimes we talk about, as far as timeliness, we talk about people that need to be corrected in whatever behavior that they're doing. But oftentimes, too, people need to know right then and there that they're doing a good job. Doesn't mean you just stop everything and like stop the presses and be like, David did an amazing job today. No. But just a quick, hey, great job, thank you for doing that, and then move right along. That gives that person, you don't want to wait till the end of the next day shift. You don't want to wait till the end of the month to say, oh wow, you did a great job. Remember back on February 2nd, 2019, you did an awesome job that day. I don't know what I did February 2nd, 2019. Sometimes I don't remember what I did 2 days ago. Okay? And so that timeliness is really crucial. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to point out that we've got to watch not using curse words in our work environment.
Okay, absolutely.
Go along with that.
So it does, the words that you choose are definitely important. You know, Teresa brought up a good point about our guests can hear us, what we're talking about. So you want to use professional language. And also, I mean, I know in our kitchens there's swearing that happens, and we even have chefs that are on staff here that have that swear, and not that it's a bad thing. I'm not saying that they're a horrible human and unprofessional human being, but it's just the different environment. So I appreciate in any classes that I have, and you guys have done a really great job of this, is having that professional language and understanding that the environment that we're in means that there's no swearing, that there's no inappropriate or hurtful language, that everyone is really kind of building everybody up. And that's really key. So active listening, passive listening, and non-listening mode. Okay. I've already said this example in my previous class this morning, but I'll say it again. How many of you have had a conversation where or an instance where you have to have a conversation with somebody about something that's really bothering you, and you're like, I'm going to say this, and then she's going to say this, and then I'm going to say this back, and then she's going to respond this way, or I'm going to do this, and then he's going to say this, and I'm going to do this in return. You're planning that conversation out. Does that conversation go as planned? Usually not, okay? Almost never. And if you are not actively listening, you're focused on what you're already going to say in response, then it doesn't matter what that person says. That person could say, you're right. And then you're like, yeah, but, oh wait, she just said I was right, okay? And you have to stop. So you have to actively listen. And you have to remove that noise. And sometimes emotion is that noise. Passive listening is where you're only listening to things that you want to hear so that you can respond, okay? That's when you're thinking about your response already. Non-listening is when things, you do not get it. So if you are, let's say you're in math class and you're on your phone and you're just scrolling through your news feed and your professor is talking about something, and then you go back and you're like, I wasn't paying attention. I don't know how to do this. Okay, that non-listening mode. Also, when we're communicating in the workplace, also in our personal lives as well, if you're sitting there with your arms folded, okay, arms folded, looking up at the sky, somebody's talking to you and you're shaking your head, what does that communicate? You are not listening. It doesn't matter what I say. I could say you are the most important person in the world and you just got a $1,000 raise for being amazing, and you're gonna be like, nope. All right, great. I'm glad that you don't agree with me. Okay, so I mean that definitely that non-listening mode, and so let me give you a quick example. Something that I experienced recently, and my timeliness was not necessarily, in my opinion, maybe not necessarily appropriate, but I felt it was at the moment. I'm on a board of directors for an organization outside of San Antonio. And I had to have a really sensitive conversation about pay to somebody on our association. And one of the people on the board of directors is really good friends with this person. And so I'm having this conversation about, what are we going to do about this pay? We're not going to increase it. Are we going to decrease it? What are we going to do? And the entire time she was sitting across the row from me, and she was just shaking her head, her arms folded, this ugly scowl on her face. And I finally called her out. I said, look, your nonverbal cues are telling me that you're not even open to having this discussion. And she said, we're talking about somebody's pay, and you're going to lecture me on nonverbal cues. And hold on. So sometimes it's difficult for somebody to, and she said, you're going to lecture me on nonverbal communication. And I said, absolutely. Because this is the conversation we need to have as a board of directors that affects our organization. And I kept my tone cool and collected. And everybody else in the group saw through my communication that this person was being unreasonable, like you guys mentioned before. They're the ones being unreasonable, and you're trying to make an effort. And then we were able to facilitate the discussion with other people, because nobody wants to talk about sensitive topics about somebody's pay and somebody's, livelihood. But if it means the difference of having a successful organization and our organization not being successful, then that's a conversation we have to have. And there has to be open communication. And so sometimes we talk about really sensitive stuff, but we have to have that open communication with that and have it be effective. So nonverbal communication is anything that does not, like, it's not sound, and it's not words, okay, that you're speaking. So your eye contact, whether you smile or not. Now, I'm not saying you have to walk around and like smile from ear to ear every moment of every single day, okay? Because sometimes we just don't want to do that. Sometimes, in hospitality, if you're on, you're on. Have y'all ever heard that before? When you have to be on, you have to be on. When I'm in front of guests, it doesn't matter what kind of day I'm having. I've got to leave it at the door, and I've got to focus on what I've got to do to be working, and I have to focus on having a smile on my face. Okay? And as soon as I walk out that door, if I no longer have to work with guests, well, then I can frown and I can be upset and whatever. But if I'm on the job, I need to focus on being on the job, because the guest wants that great experience. They're paying for a great experience. Okay? So that nonverbal communication, your body positioning. Most hotels do not have chairs behind the front desk. Why is that?
They want you to be erect.
Oh, to be.
They want you to be standing up.
In the eye, looking in the.
Yeah, exactly. If I walk into a hotel and I see somebody sitting in a chair, chances are their posture is not going to be great. Chances are they're going to be slumped over, and that's not a good first impression. Okay, so most hotels don't have chairs. We have chairs in the back office. We also have cameras that point at the front desk. Have you ever walked into a hotel before and like, poof, this person magically appears? How do they know I was here? There's a camera. Okay. Yeah, if you can't get their attention, there might be a belt desk as well. Okay. Space is a non-verbal communication. Okay. That can definitely be a barrier. I essentially have zero personal space. I think I have negative personal space. Okay, I hug people when I say hello. I've listened to a comedian recently. Can't think of her name off the top of my head. She's pretty hysterical, but she has this bonus track on her CD, and it talks all about how she hates to hug people. And she's like, how did hugging become so casual? And it really has. Hugging has become kind of a casual way of saying hello. If you see me out networking, I'm probably going to hug people. The other nonverbal cue that I need to be aware of is when somebody goes like this, okay? If I'm walking up to somebody and I'm getting ready to give someone a hug, and they're like this, I'm like, oh, hey. And like we do like the whole casual, just kidding, I'm going to shake your hand instead, okay? So those nonverbal cues, we have to be aware of those. I'm sending a message. I want to give you a hug. I want to say hello. They're sending me a message. Back off. I don't want to be touched, okay? So our personal space. Also, if we're too far away, like that person that's in a big meeting that says, oh, I don't need a microphone. I got a big voice. Can you guys hear me in the back? I'm sorry, what? What did you just say? Yes, you need a microphone. Okay, that's going to be a negative barrier. That's going to be a barrier to communication. Silence is also something that is nonverbal that is very effective.
Yeah, I get silent and make me faces when I'm quiet. That means that hell is about to explode.
Absolutely. So if I'm in a situation, and I tell people this as well, again, I'm really super happy-go-lucky and I love to talk. But if I get to a point where I immediately stop talking, then that's the time that you need to go away. And so it also can be a situation where, whether it's in a meeting or whether it's in a classroom or whatnot, I've used silence as a cue that something is not right. So if I notice that like 5 people are on their cell phones, then I'll just stop talking. Or if people are having a side conversation, then I'll just stop talking. And hopefully at some point they'll realize he's not talking. He might be saying, he might have asked a question. I'm waiting for people to pay attention. So that silence actually is a piece of nonverbal communication. That it can be very effective. Yes, ma'am.
I would also say it's kind of the opposite, because I'm the silent person. Like if I'm mad, if I'm silent, don't talk to me, let me mellow it out. But my dad is the complete opposite. When he is annoyed, he's constantly like, well, this was a great day. Well, I can't believe we did this. Why are you not talking to me? Are you just not going to say anything? Like,
You only wish you was
going
silent.
and going and going. You're just like,
Yeah, this is true, because sometimes silence makes people anxious. I think my father is the same way. Like in the car, like we'll wait, we'll test it out to see how long it'll take for dad to start making comments, because he just hates silence, that awkward silence. And so it does make some people feel they have to fill that silence. Okay, good point. So at that point, you can use your verbal communication and say, I'm not really wanting to talk to you right now.
Okay.
Thank you. Please stop talking. I'll talk to you when I'm ready. Okay. Eye contact. Definitely, if I'm talking to somebody and if I don't eye contact with them, they may not know that I'm even talking to them. I can be like in the kitchen and I can say, hey, Randall, give me that spoon over there. Well, if I'm not looking at Randall, he's like, wait, did he just say my name? Like, but if I say, hey, Randall, get that spoon for me, then I'm making that connection and I'm establishing the communication, okay? It also, if you don't have eye contact, it can potentially communicate that you are shy, that you are not as confident, that you don't really know exactly what it portrays that maybe you don't know exactly what you're talking about, okay? Now, does that mean that everyone who's shy doesn't know what they're talking about? Absolutely not, okay? But it's important to maintain that eye contact in order to give that presence, that executive presence we've talked about before, okay? We don't want to stare to make people feel uncomfortable, okay? You don't want to stare. You want to blink occasionally, okay? You want to make it kind of casual. And so I remember one time I wore my contacts for the longest time. This is when I realized that my eyes communicate. I used to wear contacts all the time. And so whenever I was wearing glasses, of course I saw the frames of my glasses, and because I was wearing contacts, that means they were sunglasses. Well, then I was a poor college student and I couldn't afford contacts anymore, so I had glasses, and I was talking to somebody on the bus, or they were talking to me, and I had zero interest in what they were talking about, and I saw the frames around my eyes and assumed they were sunglasses, not realizing they were actual eyeglasses, and they could see my face, and they were like, "Are you listening to me?" I was like, of course I am. And I realized, oh crap, I've got glasses on. They can see my eyes. I can't I'm like rolling my eyes, or I'm like looking up into the space. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they can actually see my eyes. Yes, I need to make sure that my eyes are focused on them, okay? Facial expressions. Those can definitely, so some people, based on your facial expressions, I think that you're not enjoying this lecture, and that's okay. But we have to make sure that is communicated, that you understand how that's communicated, especially in hospitality, okay? Especially in hospitality. If you as a manager have to go and address customer service issues and you don't approach the table with kind of this warm environment, if you already have a scowl on your face, and that person's already scowling because they're upset, or if you go into the situation as a manager and be like, oh my gosh, what's this person gonna want for free? That mentality is going to be communicated in how you address that person, okay? And so you really do have to focus on how things are communicating. Your body positioning is definitely something. So again, if you're in a situation where you're a server, if I walked up to a table and was like, what can I get you guys to drink? What do you want? Okay, I'm crossing my arms. If I walked up to the table as a manager and I walked up and be like, how is everything today? Well, that's not a very open, your body language is not portraying an open in the line of communication. It's closing off. I'm upset about something, right? And so you want to make sure that if you are in that situation in hospitality, that you want to make sure that your body language is also presented in a way that people are going to feel that the line of communication is going to be open, okay? Space we talked about, silence we've talked about, emotion. This is a big one, okay? And emotion, if you can, emotion does not necessarily mean anger. It could mean that you're really sad about something. Something tragic has just happened, and you want to explain to somebody why you weren't at work. And that emotion could potentially prevent you from conveying the right message. You could potentially even get to the point where you couldn't even speak if it was a really tragic situation. So sometimes we might have to write. But again, especially if it's anger, which is the one that's more commonly expressed, okay? If it's anger, then we want to make sure that that's removed from the tone of our voice. We want to make sure that when we're writing, that those words cannot be conveyed in a way that the reader is not going to be able to encode or to decode that message. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Just really quick, I had a coworker. She came back from her break and she was just crying. But we're in a room like filled with a bunch of crying babies. So I feel like when we saw her, I was just like, okay, nobody's gonna jump in. I'll jump in. I said, hey, if you want to take like a quick 5 minutes, if you want to go to the bathroom, clean yourself up. I said, whatever's going on. I said, you can tell one of us in a little bit. I said, but just wash up your face, take a deep breath, and relax. And she was just like, okay. And then she went into the bathroom. She was there for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And
Yeah.
Honestly, I told my boss, I was just like, hey, I don't know what's going on, but something's going on. She just needs her time. And I was like, and then she came back and then she was okay. And she was just like, thank you. I was like, you want a piece of gum? I don't know. When people feel like, I don't know what to do in those situations. So I'm like, you want to go? So I had this huge cube of gum, like those extras or whatever. And like every single time someone was crying or somebody was going through something, I was like, here's the gum.
Gum makes everything better.
So yeah,
It takes away from that. Make them stop thinking about what they're thinking.
Yeah, awesome. That's good. Good, great example. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Written communication. Written communication is just as important as verbal communication in the business world. Okay. We all know that Teresa can't stand grammar, improper grammar in speaking, but I'm just going to.
And I believe it. My husband is a grammar Nazi, and I hate him for it because he's constantly telling me what I'm doing wrong. So, but what it does is, unfortunately, has brought up this horrendous part of me that when he tells me what I'm doing wrong, I then pick it up in other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It bothers me, but I'm still far from.
You let it slide a little bit. You're a little bit more lenient.
I'm far from being.
Okay.
Queen here.
I'm just kidding.
Especially my writing, you'll know.
So in our written communication, grammar and spelling is just as important because especially in business writing, it's going to present a more professional image. And so if I submit my resume and there is 10 to 15 spelling or grammar errors, how seriously is that person going to take me as a professional? Probably not. Most HR people that I've talked to, like 3 is the max. Like 3 strikes, you're out. It's not just about baseball. 3 strikes, you're out. There's the 3rd grammar error, boom, we're done. I've got 150 applications to look at. And so that's something that's really important, okay? In the event side, how many of y'all want to be wedding planners or event planners? Anybody in here want to do that? Okay, how many of you want to be bakers in here? Okay, cool. So if you can't write a proposal appropriately and there's misspelling, well, first of all, you want to make sure that everything is spelled on your cake appropriately. But then also, like as an event planner, if I'm doing a proposal to you of like for your event and I want to do all these different events with you, and everything is misspelled and the grammar is horrible and everything like that, if I'm not paying attention to the detail of the proposal I'm sending you, how much attention to detail am I going to give you on your event? Okay, and so that piece of paper is your part, just as much part of your interview per se as the actual interview process. Yes, ma'am.
I've got a good example in a chef situation of written.
Okay.
We have to label every stinking little piece of everything and date it in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
This guy made a Caesar salad and we put the thing and he wrote seizure salad.
Okay.
Seizure, and then I'm looking up and I'm thinking, man, this guy said Toto.
So it definitely could lead, like, yeah, so that person doesn't know how to spell Caesar, they don't know how to spell something like that. Is that something that is as crucial or life-threatening as less than professional? Something you might look at it and be like, okay, Caesar salad, that kind of like haha, kind of chuckle to yourself.
Right, but it could be serious because they could be mislabeling things as the incorrect foods and there's food allergies to worry
Right.
about.
So there's something.
Really kill something.
Absolutely. So there is something that would be maybe a little bit more crucial. So understanding how to label things appropriately and the dates is also something that's really important as well.
Yeah.
It really does communicate that this is something that this is what's in this container. Absolutely. Okay. What other types of written communication do we have in the workplace?
Pink forms.
Emails.
Pink forms? What is that?
Like, you know, when you get written up, like,
Oh, okay.
They gotta give you like a pink form.
You get a little pink slip? Yeah, we don't want a pink slip. So I went one time to the admissions office, the welcome center. This is like my second semester working here. And I had to talk to an advisor about something. And the lady at the welcome desk, she's like, "Did you get your pink slip?" And I was like, "I just started working here." I was like, "You're already firing me?" She's like, "Oh, you're a teacher?" I was like, "Yes, I'm a teacher. I'm not a student." But thank you. I appreciate that. And so I was like, yeah, so the pink slip. So if you're written up, absolutely. So written communication, we want to document that. So that way, if somebody has, you know, David doesn't put drinks on the check and I get 4 write-ups for that, well, it comes to time to fire me. This is why you're being fired, because you cannot do what we've asked you to do. Absolutely. So that written communication, that's formal communication.
Or if you put your 2 weeks in.
Yeah, good. So you want to give a 2 weeks notice. And you need that to be in a written, especially if you want a reference from that company. You want to make sure you're leaving on good terms, and you want to do that in a professional business letter. Yes, sir.
Job application.
Good. Applications. I don't know why I've always done this. Well, actually, I know why I've done it. I don't know if it's like that important. But when I was in high school, and they taught us how to do job applications and things like that, the teacher that I got that was presenting that lesson, she said, you know, rather than writing TX for Texas, write out Texas. And rather than abbreviating things, actually write the word out. And she said for some reason, it's always stuck with me that she said that it shows that you're not taking shortcuts, that you're actually writing everything out. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it just was one of those, again, it's a nonverbal, it's a written communication. I'm not there to speak to it. So this written thing is what is presenting to somebody else, what I'm presenting to somebody else as a professional image of me. Okay? Anything else? Yes.
It could just show a person that you're actually paying attention when you actually read what they had written. Because I had gone to a restaurant once for my birthday. It was the Cake Bosses restaurant.
Uh-huh.
They came to bring me out like a free cannoli or whatever, and they had written "Happy Anniversary" on the plate. I was like, okay.
It's the anniversary of my birth. Okay. Anniversary of some sort. Good. Absolutely. So it shows that people actually pay attention to what you're doing. Good. Other things include memos. We'll talk about memos as well. Emails is electronic written communication. Texting, possibly. Okay. If you do text with anybody at work, okay, that is, again, not using abbreviations or text like LOL or BRB or things like that. Now, I say that,
They don't know how.
but if it all depends on how much you know that person. If I'm sending an email to somebody that I have known for 10 years, I might put a smiley face emoticon or emoji in my email, okay? But if it's my first ever communication with somebody, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do an LOL in that email communication. I don't know that person yet, and they don't know me. And so again, that's my impression. That's my ability to give that impression of my professionalism, okay?
Sometimes it's the only impression you get to give.
Absolutely. Very good point. All right, so it needs to be professional, formal, well presented, free of errors. We want to choose our words carefully. We don't want to use a lot of abbreviations, okay? So if I made a sentence kind of like, I was at the AHA luncheon last week, and I met the DOS for the embassy suites, and they said they needed a new CSR. Do you have anybody in mind?
What does CSR mean?
Yeah, customer service representative. Exactly. What does DOS mean?
DOS program.
Director of Sales. If you don't know who that is, if you don't know those abbreviations, you're focusing on what does CSR mean? What does DOS mean? My question is to you is, do you have anybody in mind? Well, I don't have anybody in mind because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
Okay, so even in written communication, you need to make sure that you don't. First, somebody else will be like, I don't know what AHA is. You had an AHA luncheon? Like, ooh, AHA, I had a luncheon, AHA moment. They could be focused on AHA, not even on anything else that's happening. So you might write out, I went to the Alamo Area Hospitality Association luncheon. I met the new director of sales at the Riverwalk whatever hotel, and they're looking for customer service representatives. Do you have anybody in mind? Okay. That long sentence can alleviate, if we're writing it, can alleviate any confusion. Okay. And so you want to choose the words carefully as well. Everything with it, I won't say everything. Most things should be typed. Handwritten thank you cards mean a lot, and that's okay to be handwritten. If you are somebody who has horrendous handwriting, like myself, especially if I'm in a hurry, I will actually write out my thank you card on a piece of paper, make all my edits first, and then I will literally focus on every single letter that I'm writing. Especially if it's a thank you card to somebody that I've never met before, or I've met them only once, and I want to make sure I have that good first impression. Okay. So you want to plan your message, figure out what you're going to say, and luckily, in days of technology, we can change our message, okay? It's not like a typewriter, or if we make a mistake, we have to start all over again, or use the whiteout, or things like that. We can actually just delete and reword a message, an email, okay? Keep it short and simple. To the point, people in business don't have a lot of time to read a lot of stuff. And so as a result, they're going to be looking at the subject line of that email to say, do I want to read this right now, or can I wait till later to read this? And then if they open it and it's this giant paragraph with no periods, no spaces, no nothing, they're going to be like, I don't even have time for that. I'm going to focus on something else right now. Okay? Their attention span is very short and very limited. And so if you can keep the message short, keep it simple, that way people have the ability to respond, okay? The last bullet point is one of my favorites. Share only with individuals who need to know, okay? We'll get to that in just a moment. So business letter, it can be on letterhead. Does anybody not know what letterhead is? That's okay if you don't, raise your hand. That's what we're here for. Letterhead is like, have you ever received something that has the official logo? Like for example, this right here. Right? So this is letterhead, meaning it has the logo, it might have the address, the phone number. It's an official piece of paper. It shows that it's an official document, okay? And so the letterhead is something that your company might have. You might also have letterhead if you, where it's just like an embossed, or if it's just like a logo. Just like the W, like our business starts with the letter W, and we just have a W on there. It just looks more professional, coming from that using that letterhead, okay, if you don't have a logo. The number 10 mailing envelope, anybody know what that is? It's the long skinny one, okay? And when you fold, everybody take a piece of paper out because I'm going to teach you all this. To fold, you can fold any piece of paper you have. I don't care what piece of paper you have. It could be your assignment, it can be whatever, okay? Our letter, when we send something, you fold it in thirds, and so before you crease it, you fold the bottom up and then the top over to get it kind of equal like this, and then crease it all the way down, okay? Now, I don't know if this is like business 101 or if this is like just Mr. Uminski and my analness that I like things, but when I open this, the first of your letters should be the first thing I open, right? So when I open this top part should be flapped down. It should not be like this, right? And so I open it and boom, I have my, same thing when I put it in the envelope. So I put it in the envelope just like this. So when the person pulls it out, the first thing they do is they open it and they see the top and then they fold it down. That just might be me being really picky, but I think it just definitely shows an attention to detail, okay? An attention to detail. Yes, Sarah, were you gonna say something?
Okay, so I was at their level for 5 years, and when I took classes in courses, they taught me to pull it where the letterhead is in the front. So
Okay.
pull it out, don't pay attention to it, you just rip it open out of that envelope.
So like this, where you can actually see the letterhead.
The letterhead
Okay.
from, but the important information is still behind. That's why you have the spacing.
Yeah.
The date,
Okay.
And then the green, and then the letterhead, and then the space goes over. The important message
Is in the back.
side.
Okay, cool. I've never heard that before, but that makes sense to me. Absolutely. Okay, good. Same thing like, so these thank you cards I'm going to send out later today. When I put them in the envelope, I don't want to put them in upside down, especially because there's a picture on it. But otherwise, I don't want to put it backwards. I want them when they open it. Y'all listen to Kid Craddock in the morning? Kid Craddock in the morning?
I don't know that it's.
Okay, 96.1. They had like this big discussion last week about what's the front of the envelope, what's the back of the envelope. Okay? Yeah. I caught the very end of it. I didn't quite get it. I just think JC was wrong. And so again, like this is the back of the envelope. The address is on the front of the envelope. This is the back of the envelope, but the front of the card faces the back. So when I open it, I see, and I open it up, and I see the card like this. Okay?
It also too doesn't allow you, because most people will put it in first and then address it, so it doesn't put the print, it doesn't.
Oh, the address on the card. Okay, good. Good, absolutely. Excellent. Okay. Handwritten notes, very, very important. Documentation, Damien talked about this already. If there's any kind of documentation of something that's happening, we want to make sure that we're keeping a record of that. Okay? Whether it's something with a guest that we've had, whether it's an employee has an issue not following the guidelines or being late to work, we want to document all of that. If a customer falls, we want to make sure we document that. Why do we want to document it?
Legal reasons.
So for legal reasons, we want to document what happened. We want to document what we did. We want to file a report, any witnesses. If we need to contact our security officer, okay, we want to make sure, we do. And so we want to do all of that and document that so that if we do have a legal issue, that person comes back in 2 years from now and it's like, oh my gosh, my hip hurts because I fell back in 1998, right? I have that documentation about this is what happened. If I don't have the documentation, then there's nobody can say anything except for what that person is saying, right? And so you'll learn about those types of documentations in the legal issues course. But we always want to be documenting that, and that's all written communication, okay? Typically, if there's an evaluation, your manager signs it, you sign it as a recognition that you have read it, that you either agree with it. Sometimes there might be a spot for you to leave comments, whether or not you agree with the evaluation or not. It all depends on the different organization, okay? Presentations, I'm not going to go too much into detail with presentations, but you will be giving presentations. In school, you will be giving presentations in work, in any kind of situation. Okay, at some point you will potentially give a presentation. Your presentation should not be paragraphs. This is a bad example of what to include in a presentation, okay? Keep in mind, you want to keep the statements on a slide as a bullet statement. They should be used to trigger your memory about what you want to say. Remember, if you're giving a presentation, your eye contact should be on the audience and not reading directly off the screen. This is the exact same information, but in a bullet point setting, okay? Setup. So my bad examples include, and this just helps me as a presenter to go and these are here to remind me what I want to talk about. I know the information because I put the presentation together. And so I wanted to convey to you all, whether you're in a classroom, whether you're in a meeting or whatever, if I'm pitching my sales idea, I want you to know that I know what I'm talking about, okay? Also, the visual content of our presentation is just as important, okay? Verbal content, again, we don't want to read directly from the slide. This is just here to give us a bullet point to remind us what we want to talk about. Nonverbal communication, things that communicate, is how you dress. Actually, I just realized I'm not wearing a tie today. I came to work and I left my house without a tie, and I was like, I've got a bag of ties in my office, I'll do it. Well, I get here at 6:30 and I am nonstop teaching, and so I forgot to put a tie on. I apologize. Anybody in here wearing a tie? Okay, good. I was going to give you a bonus point if you were wearing a tie. All right, so dress professionally. That's part of your presentation. Okay, if you're in a class and you're doing a group presentation, I encourage you to dress professionally when you do those presentations. Whether the professor asks you to or not, I encourage you to do so. Even if your group members do not. Okay, you might be that group member's like, what are we going to wear? It's like, calm down, David. We don't all have to coordinate when we give a presentation. I'm like, I know, but it gives the whole image that we're a team, that we're working together. So are we more black or are we more brown? What are we gonna do? And they're like, stop it. Let's focus on what we actually have to do. Okay. The visual content, nothing should be smaller than a 22-point font. Think about somebody sitting in the very back of the room. If I have a 12-point font, something up here, you're not going to be able to read that, okay? Yes, I can read on a piece of paper, but you're not going to be able to read it in the back of the room. So 22 is my general rule of thumb. 22 is the smallest font that I will try to use. I might have to go a little bit smaller in sometimes, but in that case, I'm going to use the visual of contrast. I'm going to do a dark background with a light text, or a light background with a dark text. And hopefully that will help, even though I can't give the size that I want, hopefully it'll give that contrast and I'll be able to do that, okay? Slang is not appropriate. We talked about foul language already.